Hi there, or good evening, or good day, depending where you are. Let's get the things rolling. So first of all, yeah, I can see myself, or actually the table. So hopefully it will work. And then let's add, Moikka moi Riikka. Let's add, hey Mia. Now there's a link to the announcement post with all the supplies linked. All, well, I say all, but for example, I didn't mention glue there or water mister, but the mediums, let's say, are hopefully at least all there linked. Couple of words. This time I'm mainly babbling again in English, but if there's any Finnish speaking audience around, of course you can ask questions in Finnish as well. Let me quickly change to that language for a while and then continue with English. Elikkä heippa hei ja hyvää iltaa. Pääasiassa tänään siis höpötöksenä taas englannin kieli, mutta kuten yleensäkin, niin suomeksikin voi kysyä kysymyksiä, jos joku mietityttää tai menee ohi tai ihan mitä vaan, niin voi kommentoida suomeksikin, mutta pääasiallisesti tosiaan siis tällä kertaa kielenä englanti. Ensi kuussa sitten taas Suomen puolella, niin kuin ihan yksi kokonainen live. Well, and back to English again. So thank you for joining, first of all, and I'm hoping that you can see and hear me okay. If you don't, then please let me know. I'll keep an eye on the chat there on the side and try to answer your comments and questions during. But if I miss anything, I'll go through the comments afterwards. And this is something I'm now doing. Little altered playing cards, nothing too fancy, a couple of fun techniques, at least I think they're fun, so hopefully some new inspiration. So let's get started. Oh, and if you have any ideas about future lives or requests, then please let me know. I'm happy to try to whip up something. Riikka is saying that, well, there was these Finnish mini playing cards in Easter egg, and Finnish crafters were kind of went for a hunt for those because they are these teeny tiny ones, and I got a package as well. So glad to hear that this is now a perfect timing. I didn't use those mini cards in these, but regular size. Joo, niin tosiaan niin kuin englanniksi hölpötin, niin siis itselläkin on ne, mutta mennään nyt tämmöisellä ihan peruskokoisella. For these I wanted to have different, what are these called? They are not lands. In Finnish they are called lands, but well, different cards anyway. So let's pick a couple of, like a spade and a heart. And maybe, do we have a diamond here in some place? Maybe that one. Hey baby. So these are just cheap, regular playing cards, which I have. Hearts, spades, and clubs. Yeah, but what are they called? The different things. Spades and, like, suits? Are they suits? Sorry, my English ain't working today. Okay, now I got these. But yeah, these are just cheap playing cards I have actually bought for crafting material. So they might be a couple of missing already. And, well, now at least. Suits. Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Marcia. So, hey baby. And I wanted to use this side kind of well, pattern background. First I was thinking this side, but then I opted for the print on the back. And the first thing I'm going to do for these is give them a coat of clear gesso, because these are kind of plastic cards or coated. So if I'm working with water-soluble crayons, for example, that they are not going to look that nice if I'm just putting them straight to the plastic type of surface. So a coat of clear gesso. You could use white as well, but then of course it has the white pigment in it, so it's not the same anymore, but a little bit then dulled version. So that's why clear gesso, or maybe even a matte medium could work to give a little bit of that base, a tooth for the paints coming on top. I'm then adding some acrylic paint here as well, and for that I wouldn't need the gesso coat, but for the crayons it's then handy to have a kind of primer underneath. So just a quick coat to all of them. And by coating the whole thing from side to side, then in a later stage I don't have to kind of be aware where the primer is or isn't, because it's the whole way coated. Heipä heijasta! It's acrylic based, like just I'm using, so it should be dry quite quickly, but let's give it a quick dry with the heat tool so we don't have to wait. That's it. Here we go. First step done. And it seems like nothing has been done, but there's now the coat, so it's easier to build on top. And then you really can't tell it from the actual card anyway, because it's underneath it all, but there's a layer of acrylic paint on top, and then I'm using a stencil kind of the opposite way what you would think, because I'm using a huge stencil. This is by StencilGirl, Mixup Apter, ATC Mixup, and I really love because there's different patterns for me to choose. So you would think that I would put now the stencil on top and use the paint through it, but quite the opposite. In fact, I put the paint first, and now I have to work somewhat quickly. And then I put the stencil on top, wet my rag, and then I remove the paint through the stencil. There's some tinting or coloring happening, but just a fun idea. Of course, now the pattern kind of gets absorbed because there's pattern and pattern happening, so you can't really tell the 1, 2, 3 anymore. But an idea to use a stencil kind of the opposite way around. Not applying the paint, but removing it. But as it's an acrylic product, so I'm now doing 1 by 1 and not the whole trio at the same time, so it won't dry too much. And I can actually remove the paint. And with a technique like this, you might consider a bit of open stencil, like bigger gaps, because then it's removing more paint than just a teeny tiny, for example, this stencil, which I'm using a little bit later on, because then a rag might not even remove the pattern so much, but little openings, whereas with the more open stencil or a pattern, then you can really get interesting results. Marsha is saying that this way of using stencil is new to her. Yes! Perfect! I'm so happy that I get to inspire. Hi, Janice! And this kind of technique is really handy, because there's, at least to my eye, some stencils would work better, let's say this way, than the normal way of applying the paint through it. So if you want to kind of, well, an inverted thing, of course the other option is to add something like a watercolor or water reactive ink to the stencil and press it like a stamp, but just an idea to get it with acrylic paint, kind of the negative. Then let's again dry these. I was using a PaperArtsy Fresco Finish paint, so they will dry dull and kind of chalky looking, but again, any color would do. Like with the gesso, any clear gesso will do. There's different brands. Then first, hey Susanna! First application of the crayons. These ones are by Prima Marketing that I'm using, but distress crayons would work nicely as well. Pencils that are water soluble, same thing, they would work. Only that if you're working on such a sleek surface, even with the gesso on top, pencil is kind of more, there's more kind of friction, how do you say it? But it might cause the gesso to kind of be removed from the card, because you need to, if it's a really soft pencil, then it's okay, but just keep that in mind and try out if it works for you, or if a softer kind of crayon style thing would be more to your liking. I'm kind of mixing in the blue tone from the card with some rusty or tea-tone style things that are inspired by the vintage photo, which is black and white, but still kind of those vintage tones. And as you can see, I didn't follow any strict pattern there, just added some color. And then I take a wet brush and start to remove, or not remove, move it around here. Not getting everything smudged. There can be these more stroke-like markings as well, but just a little bit here and there. And now the gesso layer is really handy, because otherwise when I'm introducing the border there, it might not react so nicely. I make a little puddle, because of course you know what comes next. Splashes. a little bit more of that blue tone there. There's a plastic covering on this work table, so I'm able to just use a water soluble media like that. If you have a palette, then that's also something you can use. Oops, now there's a lot of splashes going to the ready cards already. Then let's add a little bit of brown. Mixing the two. I really come to like the mix of brown and blue, because depending on the medium, they sometimes create this really gorgeous green, kind of an olive tone. And well, my tip would forever be use a couple of colors and let them mix on top of the project, because then you get an infinite amount of different colors rather than just one or two, or if you mix the two colors on a palette, but if you mix them on top of the project, then there's the variations, like the different amount of blue and green or whatever colors you have. Then let's move these aside for a while. No drying this time. Maybe they will air dry, hopefully. And I think this is the one that shows you the what I'm doing next the best. Oops, sorry. Hopefully I'm somewhere in the near. Yeah. So frottage. Funky name, but a really easy technique. Probably you already know it from childhood. Oh, Susanna is saying something. She has to go back to sauna. Saunassa tauolle huomasin, että täällä on livejä. Suosikkiaihe. Jälkikäteen. Joo, kurkkaa vaan. Ei mitään kovin erityistä. Siis ihan vaan erilaisia juttuja hängen pelikortteihin. Hyvää saunaa! So, a stencil, some paper, and these are Derwent Light Fast, so they are oil-based pencils. But again, you could use the crayons or various mediums for this. But now we are putting the stencil underneath the paper and then coloring or rubbing from the top. I bet you know this technique from childhood, doing different coins, at least I did when I was a child. So you can get the impression of the pattern subtly. It's not a in your face type of thing. Let's put this one this way. A little bit more room. Same thing works with embossing folders. Heipä hei, Kirsi. Or even might work, depending on the medium, with stamps. Yeah, this is just kind of these plus signs or little crosses, and they make this fun, even like a dimensional looking thing when you use the stencil underneath. So that's another little thing you can try, just like to have more things to do with stencils than just apply color or mist or something through them. Then just use the stain stencil for these. Joo, tommonen niinku mummopitsin näköinen. En tiedä, onko se hyvä sana, mutta siis silleen niinku, että se ei ole sellainen vähän samanlainen kuin tässä on nämä, niin ei ihan tän näköinen, mutta tommonen niinku kivan näköinen. Let's quickly dry these. Marcia said that her kids went to the graveyard and took rubbings of gravestones. That's something that's in the Agatha Christie, one of the Agatha Christie films, I think. Just popped into my head that there was this lady whose hobby was to make the frottage from different graves or gravestones. But yeah, now this is like a more traditional use for the stencil, applying something through it. And it's partly about repetition. So there's now going to be the same pattern twice in these cards, but just using a different method. So what I'm now applying through the stencil is modeling paste. Adding a little bit of light to the cards there and giving a nice texture. I could have used to like heavy gesso even, or then just acrylic paint through this to get some kind of pattern repeated. I chose this smaller pattern over the other stencil I was using because I didn't want that layer to be too heavy. More like a subtle way of adding a little bit of light there. Now that the stencil is somewhat clean, let's see, then we need another piece of paper. Those go there. They can now dry for a while. We need some stamps and we need the crayons again, the water-soluble versions. This is a really big stamp. Maybe I'll try to do it once, the whole thing, so you can see the whole thing. But the idea behind using the whole thing was actually just to give an inspiration or maybe an idea that you don't always have to do the whole stamp, but you can use a little detail in your project. But now I'm going over the whole thing once, so you just get the idea what image this is. So I colored with the water-soluble crayons directly to the stamp, and now I'm spraying some water on top. The amount of water plays a kind of key role how good or how accurate, crisp the image will be. So this is now the whole thing. But as you can see from the little samples, I just used this part. So you don't have to, if you have a big background stamp or a bouquet of flowers or whatever, like a big thing, but you need something small. You don't always have to have abundance of different stamps for different purposes if they are, for example, eclectic like these are. So you can just ink a little detail and use that instead of having tiny stamps. So just adding the crayons directly to the stamp, then adding water and stamping. If I would now do like a yellow and a blue and a green one, I would then really clean the stamps between the takes, let's say. But as I'm going with this variation of color anyway, and using kind of the same palette as I have already going with blues and browns, then I'm just layering the colors almost immediately on top. So we need 3 of these. And then we need the labels. I think I did 1 of each, yes. This is also a handy way of, if you want this watercolor like image, of if you're happy with it, and you can then apply the colors, for example, for a bouquet of flowers, or let's say a cottage or something, and you want the roof and the windows and the door to be different colors, so you don't have to mask it anyway or something like that, because you can just pick the color you want, color it to the area you're going to need it, and then add the water at the last stage, and thus get the image you are wanting. Marsha is from Michigan. Yeah, the Christie books are probably just English, but written. Just something. Here we go. So for example, there I used a little bit less water than these, so it's a bit more crispier, but also kind of where this is the full line, there's some kind of markings from the crayon. So it's a kind of balance act between those two things, if you want a crisper image or a kind of full color, but also different crayons might work differently. Neo color 2, for example, any kind of water blendable, water soluble crayon will work with this. Then let's quickly add a little bit of heat here. Cut these out. So now I'm cutting the lovely lady in pieces. That's some collage material. Although I might not keep every bit because I used to keep all even the little pieces that were leftovers, but then I ended up with drawers and drawers filled with little pieces of paper. And as I work in our living room, or crafting in our living room, I don't have that much storage space, so I kind of need to think what I want to save and what I have to let go. So now I'm just cutting the little lace patterns, embellishments loose. Let's put one of these here so you can kind of see what I'm after. And I probably said this like 1,000 times already, but if you are fussy cutting, then the scissors stay put, and whatever you're then cutting is the one that does the moving. That makes things a little bit quicker, but essentially more convenient, because then you don't have to try to warp your arm around things. Marsha says she has saved too much too. Yeah, that's a problem. I've seen those videos in Instagram that they're going to throw something away and then they save everything, like the smallest pieces of fabric or whatever, because it can be used. I also have a drawer filled with kind of broken things that might be good things for canvases or bigger projects, but I try to go through that once a year at least. So if a piece hasn't moved within the year, then it's going to the bin or recycling, depending what it is, because there's just so much space you can kind of hoard. Yeah, if you do mixed media at least, or maybe any kind of crafting, because probably kind of those people that make dolls houses also hoard every little bit, because they can be turned into lamps or various items. But you see the beauty in the smallest pieces also, and see the potential. But every now and then you just have to let go. Okay, now we have all sorts of different elements. We have the stamped bits, we have the frottage, rubbing thingies, then the focal point. With these I went with kind of groups of children, and I picked some groups here as well. Let's see, groups of ladies perhaps. That would be a good fit. Maybe those two. Let's go with these three that were in the bottom of the pile. So they will be left for another project. And then I'm adding a little bit of kind of texture to these pieces by tearing the edges. And it's way too big now, but I'm going to mount it to the card before cutting it smaller. Oh, this would be fun, Marsha, if you would use your own kind of pictures or kind of reproductions. Of course, I wouldn't use maybe the actual old family heirlooms and such like with these, but then have a copy made, or just scan it and print it or something, and then you could make like a little, what this could be, a notebook cover, a tiny notebook or something, or just give them as they are. Or if you use a suit and then have the kind of king and queen and jack, and if there's like a mom, dad, boy, or then children would be the 10, 9, depending of their age or something. Sorry, I needed a sip of water. So let's see if, yeah, the modeling paste is dry enough. It's not totally dry, but it's not going to smudge that much if I'm just working on top. So these pieces are meant to act kind of here as a little bench or whatever kind of surface that they're sitting on, and in these to have some kind of grounding element so that people aren't just floating in mid-air. So we need some glue for this one. Only child of an only child. Yeah, then the actual kind of royals would work. Just use the jack. Like that. Then a bit of glue. At this stage, I'm not even picking which one goes to which. Maybe I'll put this one then a little bit higher up, so it's for the sitting ladies to have a kind of a bench or windowsill or tree trunk. But that's kind of fun to know, Marsha, that you have Finnish roots. At least I read your comment that way, that there was a big migration in the beginning of the 19th century, I think, or during the 1800s. I actually looked up the year for something, but I haven't got any recollection what it was. I think there was 2 waves of Finns moving to the US and Canada. So like that. Then my newest little love, white cotton tape. My boss, who is really into going to the gym, said, well, I posted this, my great find, to the Instagram, and she was like, come on, I would have given you a piece of that, because she uses this kind of sporty kind of tape all the time. But I was so excited when I saw this. A fabric tape with a good adhesive and white, so you can easily color it any color you want. So I'm again using the same colors that I already have going on there. Yeah, good question, Riikka. Where, if you know, Marsha, where your parents immigrated, I'm not sure which one it is, sorry. Maybe a bit brown. Oh, and you already have your stash. Then this, if he has them in the gym bag. But I'm really liking to add kind of a different. Okay, now I put a bit too much. There would have been just a little bit. But then let's go with this. yeah, but another kind of texture for the card. So there's not just paper, but there's the medium layers, but also a little bit of fabric in the mix, and that makes a fun little detail. I'm actually now adding a little bit more because, for example, here I really overdid the coloring. It's now too vibrant for my taste, so let's put something over. Like that. Done. And then let's do the holes at this point, so it's easier. I don't have to mind that much. This is something I picked up from D.D. Catron, I think. She was the first one I saw using holes as a kind of design element. So just randomly punching a couple of holes. Because otherwise I'm not kind of touching the shape or the size of the playing cards, but I thought that making a couple of holes to them would alter the card a little bit, not drastically, but add a little something. I'm just using this crocodile, so they are just round holes, but you could use even different little shapes, for example. And now there's a great family history from Masha. I have to read it a little bit later, or otherwise I'll get caught up with it. But Helsinki! Yay! I'm actually from Turku, but now living in Helsinki. Hold the corners, then we add first. Now I need to think a little bit. After you punch with crocodile, you could add a round door link and add, yeah, true. You could add a little trinket. And let's say you would have a picture like this, and then this is your great-grandma, for example, and she loved pearls. So you can add a little pearl hanging from that card then. Yeah, like that. Then I'm thinking we are putting this one here, kind of making a little backdrop for them. And then I need the stapler. The same here, where to put it. Now that there's something like that peeking from there, let's put this on the opposite side to kind of balance things out. And just staple it. And then the last one, I'm really liking the blue, not so much about that one, so let's put it here. So it's almost like this great big fan behind them, like so. Then it's just a couple of things to do. First of all, let's mount the paper dolls in place. I'm using foam tape for this, so there's a little bit of dimension coming from that. There we go. first one. Come on. Then these ladies here. And then the last one. Then maybe I'll add the little sayings first and then the cards. I'm not sure if you can guess, probably not with these really short sentences, from which book these are cut out from. So these are just something I cut beforehand, because finding a good line, it's maybe the hardest part of this project. So these are actually from the T.S. Eliot Cats. I'm not sure, that's not the name of the book, but where the musical lyrics are actually from. So this one. Probably you have access to old books, but if you don't, there's, for example, plenty of printables around the internet, or then you can make your own, use stamps, use ads. I just love the color of the book page. Hi Lena! Yeah, you can watch the recording. It should go live right after I finish these, and then, sorry, a little bit later on, probably tomorrow or on Monday, I will upload the recording also to my YouTube channel. So no worries. Yeah, Chinese books. I love also using kind of books or texts I don't understand, because then you don't look at the words, but more as a texture. Of course, there's might be then issue if there is something, or because you don't understand. I'm not saying that you don't read Chinese. I don't read Chinese or Russian, for example. They are fun-looking characters to me, but I have no clue what they are saying. But if you're looking for just a visual texture, then a language you don't read is handy. But if you're looking for titles or these kind of miniature poems or stories, then of course a language you do understand is then handy. And poetry books, if you can spare them. Oh, well, maybe I'll put that here. I was just thinking of replacing these two. But yeah, what was I saying? I got carried away with the actual titles of the cards. But yeah, if you can spare the poetry books, they have these kind of juicy lines in a way, because the language is a bit different in those than in short stories, for example. And there's of course a million of different kinds of text stickers or word stickers as well, so you can really write your little own stories or poems using those as well. So it's fun. Yeah, the example of, well, that was a kind of language I knew, was when I was making our wedding invitations, and I wanted to use a piece of an old book in the kind of cover of the invitation. And I cut these little rectangles and put stuff on top, and when I was mailing them, I luckily read through the text that was showing underneath all the embellishments, and one of the invitations actually had something like death or graveyard or burial or something like that in the text. So it went to the bin and wasn't sent out. I made a new one. But if it was a language I wouldn't read, and I would just look like, oh, it's lovely looking, and then the recipient, for example, knew that language, then it might cause a funny incident. But yeah, okay, now we have actually done the cards. So the difference between this color and this color is that I don't clean my stamps. So on top of these, I last stamped these labels using a bright red archival ink. So when I then added the actual same color of the crayon on top and stamped it, it pulled also the red from the stamp, clean it that way. But I actually love this color because it's almost the same as the background. I was even thinking that should I ink these stamps during the week with the same red ink to get that impression, the same color, but I didn't, so you can see the difference. But even though archival is kind of there to stay, it was fun to see that it then pulled off with the crayon and created this gorgeous, gorgeous blue. So maybe it would be handy to clean stamps, or then not, to have these lovely surprises. But yeah, do you have any questions about these cards or the mediums I used this time? And quick gulp again. There's some gap, but I'm thinking there might not be questions. If there is afterwards, then just leave them. I'll try to keep an eye on the chat afterwards. But if you don't hear from me, just tag me or send me an email or something if you want your question answered. Thank you so much for coming tonight or day, depending where you are. Well, I'll be seeing you next month again. A couple of words in Finnish. Eli kiitoksia, jos olitte seuraamassa tosi paljon. Jos on jotain kysyttävää, niin ei muuta kuin laittamaan viestiä, niin vastailen niihin sitten. Ja ihanaa illanjatkoa. Ensi kuussa taas sitten nähdään. So, thank you and have a great day or night depending where you are. Thank you. Bye.